I'm going to give you my opinion whether you like it or not.
Okay, I told you that the next 5 videos that I record are going to be the most important videos I've ever recorded, ever. They are beyond politics in some, they're beyond black and white in some, they're beyond liberal conservative in some, but more importantly, these are my views and my beliefs and my understandings on things. So, the first one is this. My name is Thomas, and I suffer from mental illness. I have been a person who has dealt with depression since I was 17 years old. Anybody that knows me knows these stories, but for those who don't, I have struggled with it and struggled with how to deal with it for many, many years. I joined the Army, and my mental health, my depression got worse, and situations that I thought were supposed to work out better or be better ended up making things worse. And because of that, I have been hospitalized twice for mental breakdowns. I say all that to say this. First and foremost, men do not take enough responsibility or accountability about mental health. It's ironic that I'm wearing a shirt that has an AK-47 on it, and I'm talking about mental illness, because one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of men will put masculinity ahead of their mental mind state. Let me explain to you what I mean. Men are given a set of parameters about manhood that they're passed down from men, and passed down from other men, and passed down from other men. And we think these things are perfectly normal, when in actuality, if you look at them, there's an underlying hint of fear, pain, and especially mental anguish that we don't talk about, because we're men. Men are told to man up and get over it and be a man, and boys don't cry and things like that. We're told these things because they're passed down from men who got it from other men, their fathers and uncles and brothers and grandfathers and things of that nature, and it's passed down. So it's never considered an issue because we don't really talk about it. Men are looked at as weak if we do a whole lot of crying. That's a woman's thing. Men are looked at as weak if we, for example, football players, when they're younger, when they're kids, they go out and they get their head wrung, just bell popped, and coaches tell them, walk it off. You'll be all right, walk it off. Now, I'm not saying any of this to bash men, I'm not. I am saying that level of, and let's just call it what it is, toxic masculinity, that level of toxic masculinity is ingrained in us. So we don't know how to cry. It's a parlance within man or masculinity that men don't cry. What I'm gonna tell you, that should be illegal. That should be wrong. Men absolutely should cry. We have emotions like everybody else. There is nothing weak about it. There's nothing weak about men showing affection. There's nothing weak about a man telling another man, hey man, we've been together, we've done things together, we've been hanging and banging, you've been my best friend, I love you. These things are all considered gay traits, which, when you think about it, that is the biggest deflection. So when it comes to things like, hey man, I love you, or, I'm hurt, I'm crying on the inside, men are told by other men that we're supposed to just let those things go. And sadly, the biggest part of that is mental illness. Men commit suicide at a higher rate than women. Okay? Men commit violent acts at a higher rate than women. Men show they pass that fear and that violence off because we have always been the keepers of violence. And now we live in 2020 and things are starting to open up a little bit more. We're starting to see this resurgence of ideas nobody wanted to confront. You know, the idea of defunding the police, nobody ever thought about that. Even though police officers spend more money on military gear than they even do on pensions and fucking payments. We have men that are armed to the teeth all the time, ready for a war, always on the lookout to ready to fight. We're always prepared to fight if somebody disrespects us. Don't disrespect us. Put some respect on my name. But at the same time, we live in a society now, in this day and age, where men are also saying, I am hurt. I'm sad. I'm not having a good day right now. And they're finding more openness from other men. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's how it's supposed to be. We're not these stoic robots. I don't know where this bullshit came from that men had to be these stoic ass fucking robots and we had to be armed and show no emotions. What the fuck is that? When my kids were born, I cried. I am freely admitting that. I was a father. I cried when my wife and I got married. I found the love of my life. I cried. I have a gay son who I love more than he'll ever know. He makes me proud. All of my kids do. So crying and showing emotions shouldn't be some controversial thing in the first place, but it is. Which brings me to my story. I bought into it. On a regular basis, I bought into it. The idea of the macho man. I bought into the idea that you got to be stronger and harder and ready to kill at any moment. I bought into it. And then somewhere along the line, I didn't. Again, I've been a depressive since I was 17. I tried to commit suicide when I was 20. The first time. I swallowed a bottle of pills the second time I tried to commit suicide. I'm not saying any of these things to give myself brownie points. It is what it is. And throughout all of it, I thought I had to suffer in silence. I thought it was necessary for me to maintain my manhood and not talk about these things. The men I knew didn't talk about it. I got cousins and my own brother is just now learning how to deal with his pain. In my entire life, I don't think I ever saw my father cry. Not once. Our dog died when I was a little kid. Loved that dog. The dog was there before I was born. Dog came with the family. I showed up. Dog came with the family. So when that dog was poisoned, I remember my father being in a rage and wanting to go after the neighbors, but I don't remember him crying. I don't remember him ever saying, I'm hurt. Just couldn't do it. It took me years to be able to tell my brother, my own brother, hey man, I love you. We hug. Kiss him on the cheek. One of my closest friends in this world. Do the same thing. Call him Bubby. This is a nickname for him. Now, some people will go, well, that's gay. Number one, showing affection is not gay. And number two, even if it was, what difference does that make? Why can't men be emotional without being judged? The idea of toxic masculinity isn't just, hey, I grabbed Susie's ass by the water cooler, or hey, that girl right there, I'm gonna rape her. It's more than that. It's the mentality that makes things toxic. Masculinity on its own is not toxic. But the idea that you have to be Uberman, that you have to be more than, that's where that toxic masculinity comes from. And sadly, what ends up happening is when you're so intent on being this hard man, you don't address things that are going on in here. You don't think men cry during war? You have battle buddies and friends that you go to war with, and you see them die. You don't think that affects you? There's no walking that off. Men have emotional issues. One of the things I think that causes the violence and the cheating is us not addressing those issues. The things that we absolutely should be talking about, we don't. Because it's not manly. And then you get to something like mental illness, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and depression, like I have. And you're looked at as weak if you don't just walk it off. Somewhere that has to change. And we are in the very best time to do it. The very best time. The traditional stereotypes of men is John Wayne and Charles Bronson and the fucking Chuck Norris jokes. But there's a man that could whoop all of their asses and was completely in tune with his emotional self. Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was more than just a guy that could kick ass and throw this 1-inch punch. Bruce Lee was a father and loved his children, loved them, and was not afraid to say it. Those kids grew up in a house with love in it. A father who was affectionate and played with them and joked and kissed them and told them, I love you. I kiss all of my kids on the forehead. I kiss all my grandkids on the forehead. I call my daughters princesses. I call my sons princes. My wife is a queen. So there's our family. But even with dysfunctionality involved in certain family aspects, there's still a place for that. There's still a place for men to be able to say things like, I'm not well. I'm hurting. And it wasn't until my 47th, 48-year-old life that I started to realize that it's perfectly okay for these things to happen. I never wanted to admit I was depressed. I was told black folks don't get depressed. We get the blues, when we go to church, we don't get depressed. That's a lie. Just like there was a book that came out years ago called Men Cry in the Dark. And it's a metaphor for how men hide that pain in here. We hide it. We overcompensate. We get the guns. We're ready to defend what's ours. But what good is defending what's ours if the price you pay is not being able to channel that love to those people? And it's more than just fucking. It's more than just being able to take somebody's life. You have to build on that idea that you are not just a machine. If you're able to say a woman got a great ass, you're also able to say, my brother needs my help and I love him. If you're able to say, I'll defend my family and I'll pull the gun and I'm ready to take a life, you should also be ready to tell your sons, it's okay to be weird. It's okay to be yourself. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have these emotions because daddy has them, granddaddy had them. It's okay to say that. The things that we balance, the things that we say make us men should be balanced with the things that we also say is weak, because both are needed. You can be a strong man and still have an emotional heart. You can have homies and brothers that you love and tell them. You can be uber man, fighting, ready to kill, and also be the guy to say, I'm depressed right now. I'm not feeling right. Everything in me hurts. So my story is this. I am Thomas. I have lived with depression all of my life. I have done everything I can to get over it, and I'm getting better. I love my male friends, and I tell them that. I love to be alive, and I try to live life every day going through not making enemies, not seeing enemies. And yes, I try to balance the need to defend, even to the death, with the need to help and love people. It doesn't make me any less of a man. It doesn't make any man less of a man to admit those things. The only way to defeat toxic masculinity is to be honest about it. And here's the first honest step. Men are more than violent machines. Men are flesh and blood, with hearts, with brains. We have good days, we have bad days. We love, we hurt, we get depressed. And yes, we cry. That is what a real man would do.